Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. I am so excited to be live again this Friday with Ferhensha from Barely Parenting and Karabo from Black Mom Chronicles. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hi.
It's a pleasure. And today we're going to be talking about Moms United Against Racism. And I have this topic because I think it's really important that we acknowledge that as mothers, we are not always, but very often the main caregivers of our child. We spend the most time with our children. And while apartheid was abolished nearly 20 years ago, the damage and the effect of it is not going to be gone for a very, very long time. And we are the ones that can make the difference. Cool. So I just want to remind everybody that you can join us in the comments and join in the discussion. And you can stand in line to win a 250 Takealot voucher, which I will announce the winner at the end of this video. So, Ferhensha, I'm just going to boom. You don't have a website, hey?
Pardon?
You don't have a website. You're mainly on Instagram
No,
and
just
Facebook.
yes.
Okay, perfect. Could you introduce yourself to everybody and just tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi. Ferhensha. I'm an ex-ECD prac and a mom of two. I also do a little bit of coaching, which is just to get in touch with check-ins with yourself, and then on a physiological level as to breathing techniques that you can heal from without just coping mechanisms, which are surface healing. And I'm active on Barely Parenting on Instagram, and that's where I share my heart, my beliefs, my learning journey, and everything and anything that interests me.
Awesome,
that's me.
Fantastic. And I'm so glad to have you here for this video. We did, what was our last video? My brain's gone completely blank. It's a Friday.
No, I can't remember.
We did. Okay, I have no idea what we did. I'll pop it in the comments if anybody wants to know after the video. But we did kind of touch a little bit on racism, and I really loved what you had to say, and I know I can learn a lot from you. So I'm really happy to have you here to discuss this today.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. Let me just turn my sound down on my phone so it doesn't beep again at us. And then we've got Karabo from Black Mom Chronicles. I don't know you as well as I know Ferhensha, so I'm looking forward to you learning a bit more.
Yeah. I'm also very grateful to be here as well. Hi, everyone. My name is Karabo, and I am the content creator behind the brand Black Mom Chronicles, which I started about 3 years ago, a few months after the birth of my daughter. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing after I became a mom, and that learning journey led me to creating a blog, because I'm a total oversharer, and I'm like, hey, I'm probably not the only one going through this, so let me share the experience with other moms and see, if they'd appreciate my sharing of my reality. So I've ended up like leaving corporate, where I was working in human resources, and have dedicated my life really to the brand, because then I write parenting content from pregnancy to teen years. I write that content, but on my Instagram and my website, Black Mom Chronicles, that's where I really share my conscious parenting experience, because that's been a journey on its own, because there's so much healing that has to happen on the part of the parents for us to be able to raise, wholesome and just holistic and, confident and beautiful children. So I've been really sharing that journey about really talking about conscious parenting, particularly in Black communities, which is what I'm dedicating really a lot of my content creation on right now, because there's so much work to be done in that particular segment of society. So that's what I do. I'm a parenting writer and a mom to an almost 4-year-old now, who has been my absolute best friend. I see so much of myself in her. And I've been married to my best friend for like 11 years. So that's been pretty awesome. We've been married for 2 years, but together for about 11. So the journey has been really amazing, and I'm really excited to share my experiences on this particular topic with your audience today. Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you. And I love what you said there, that we have to heal ourselves so that we can be a good parent. And I'll share a little bit about myself quick. for those of you that are watching on Karabo's channel, my name is Lynne Huysamen and my website is Kaboutjie.com. It started off as an online baby store, and I started blogging to support my store. And then I came to the realization that I don't even need any product, and all I can do is write. And, you know, I fell in love with blogging, and then I realized I don't have to actually have the store. I can just blog and I can have more freedom, and it really fulfills me. I'm also a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. In fact, it was my 13-year clean milestone on Monday. This Monday just passed. And so that's why I love what you said about healing. I might be clean, but there's a lot of healing and a lot of growth that has to come. You know, even now, 13 years down the line, I'm still learning, I'm still growing. And I find that, you know, this is a really important part, not just for me, but for my children. I don't want to pass on all these character defects that I have from my past and from my upbringing onto my children. I'd like to kind of stop the damaging cycle.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, and that's the big thing that I'm preaching right now, but just breaking cycles, because sometimes we find ourselves caught in stuff that had absolutely nothing to do with us, and we just find ourselves in them with all these traumas that are within the cycle. So it's okay to break the cycle. I mean, it takes so much work, but it's also so fulfilling also. But the awareness of it, just the awareness of it, and I commend you in that. That's a beautiful achievement. Well done.
100%.
Yeah. So you were able to realize that I just need to stop this, and you put in the work. And the work is definitely going to be fruitful, and you're going to see that in you know, people around you, your children as well. So really beautiful.
Yeah, cool. And that'll bring us to our next talking point, which is, well, the first talking point really is the importance of the conversation. And from my side, before I did a live video with what's her name, Kerry. Okay, my brain has gone dead. It's a Friday. This happens every Friday. I go completely brain dead. But I had Laura from Harassed Mom, and I had Kerry. I'm sorry. Okay, I can also add it. But we did a live video on teaching our children about racism. And it was a really good video. But I was warned by a friend of mine that's white that I shouldn't do that video. And she said, because you'll be nailed online. Someone is going to attack you or bully you, or because you're talking about racism. And I'm like, no, we need to talk about it. And the thing is that, I mean, I didn't start racism. I didn't start apartheid, but I grew up in it. And I was born into white privilege. And no matter how much I want to say I'm not racist, the fact is, like you say, the way that you brought up and these cycles, it affects who we are. So just like I need to heal myself from addiction so that I can be a better parent, I also need to acknowledge where I come from, and I need to look deep inside myself, and I need to learn, and I need to grow. So I'm still going to do my videos. As you can see, we're doing another one on racism today, but I'm not going to get everything right. But I'm open to learning. So if I do something that upsets somebody, put it in the comments, call me out, and let me learn, let me grow, let everybody learn and grow from this experience. And I think that's, you know, for me, I really think it's important for us, just because something's uncomfortable doesn't mean we've got to ignore it and run away from it and hide from it. We really need to go there so that we can grow as people. Yeah. Have you ladies got anything to add to that?
Karabo, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think that it's the topic on racism is one that we actually cannot avoid, because it is our reality, right? So on my end, at one point, you know, I find myself getting so frustrated that we still have to have the conversation because of how long ago we had expected things to change. But we really still are finding ourselves having to face the reality of what a system like apartheid has created, you know, in our current society now. Because we can't ignore the fact that it's actually happening, right? our kids are probably experiencing, fragments of it in their schools, the stuff that they're accessing online, the stuff that they're seeing on television. We still are experiencing the aftermath of apartheid. So avoiding the conversation is not going to help us move forward as a society. Because I honestly don't want my kids to be having the same conversations when she's, in her 20s, in her 30s. Like it can't keep happening. So I'm grateful for a platform like this, particularly because of our current demographic right now, that as two white women, it's going to be difficult to have the conversation to understand the reality of Blackness. So this is why I'm appreciating this platform right now, that I'm able to talk about the realities of racism from the perspective of a Black woman, and then you are able to have the conversation from your perspective as well. And then if we need to correct each other now, because I probably have assumptions of how you experienced racism in your household versus how I'm experiencing it within my world. So having this particular conversation right now, I feel is going to be effective, because I'm able to say, no, but I thought you did this and that. And you say, no, actually, this happened. And if we allow ourselves to be honest enough about our experiences, then we know what work we need to do in order to be able to equip our kids, with the kind of knowledge and understanding of we're actually just the same, We might look different. Your nose might be bigger than mine. Your hair might look different than mine. But we're actually just the same. I'm a Christian woman, and I believe that God created us all the same, but there's someone somewhere that decided that particularly our economic discrepancies make us different. Because you still find, poor Black people who are literally at the bottom of the food chain. And you find people that can afford more. And that's literally all that makes us different, is that you're poor and I'm rich. But in essence, our humanity is the same. So that's where I hope our kids can get, where they know that they're different. They can see that they're different, but at the core of their being, they're actually just the same person. But this particular conversation, I'm really happy that we can have, because then our experiences are so different about our experiences with racism.
100%. Ferhensha?
Yes, I think that the importance of this conversation is the fact that racism is walking, talking, breathing, and practicing and influencing still. And there are so many who are sitting with the refusal to accept the reality of it. And it is real, and we are still living through it. And there are still, to date, lots of desensitization, dehumanization, and hurt that so many individuals are sitting with and haven't healed from. And a lot of it plays to the fact that it is still so alive. It is still so alive. So it makes that process of healing so difficult, because we're not healing from a trauma that had happened and is completely eradicated. It is a continuous trauma, and it shows up in so many ways in so many people's daily lives that these conversations must happen. They must happen because awareness needs to come to the forefront. Because even through these conversations for such a long time, even now, there's so many people that pop up unaware, or not accepting of the reality that it is and it exists and this is what it is. So I think that's where I feel the conversation is really important, to bring that awareness, to bring that reality out to everyone and say that it's alive, it's still here, racism is still alive, it is still here, and we need to start healing as a people, because it's unfair to heal, individually without caring that there's an effect of the whole world on a person's healing. So even if you're healing on an individual level, at some point or the other, we have to live in the world. We have to interact with the world. And bringing awareness helps us heal collectively after, obviously, that we've done that within ourselves. So
100%.
Yeah.
And I love what you've both said, because as a white person, I grew up where I didn't see black people. I didn't see colored people really, unless she was cleaning my house and scrubbing the toilet behind me. And I saw one or two black children every now and then as a child, when the lady that worked for my mom brought her daughter. And then we played outside for a bit. But other than that, when you go shopping, when you go to school, when you are at home, you're walking the streets, there's the white area and there's the black area. And it doesn't mingle. So for me, growing up as a child, I wasn't even aware of racism because I don't see people of color. It's not something that was in my world. And when the black lady comes to clean your house, she gets her own cup and her own plate, and nobody uses that. But that was my norm. And that was a norm, I think, of every white household, almost every. And so that is what I grew up with. And I can't honestly sit here and say to you, I grew up like that, but I'm completely non-racist and they have absolutely no effect on me. I'm very aware now. In fact, a while ago, there was a group of guys that came to, I can't remember what work they were doing here, but they were doing work in our house. And now my husband has got OCD. So he sits on one chair, nobody else must sit in it, or he throws it away. He's got his cup. No one must touch that cup. And I offered the guys coffee. And I think there was two black guys, a colored guy and a white guy. And I offered them coffee. And I start making the coffee and I asked my daughter to get the cups out. And she just pulled cups out, which you should. But she pulled out my husband's cup. Now the guys are standing right there. I'm thinking, if my husband knows that somebody used his cup, he's going to freak. And then I'm thinking, so what do I do? Because if I take that cup and I put it back in the cupboard now, and it was uncomfortable for me. But this is, something as small as a cup is a very, very sensitive issue. So yeah, we need to talk about this, and we need to kind of find a way of navigating, how we talk, how we behave, how we interact with other people.
Yeah. So two things for me. Ferhensha said something so important about awareness. And I think that's so powerful, because I always say you have power over something you're aware of, right? Because once you're aware of it, then you can make a decision to say, oh, okay, so this is who I am. Maybe let me change it. You can choose to put in the work to be a different kind of person, for yourself and for your children. Because one important thing that you're speaking to, Lynn, now is about exposure, right? And I think a big part of the problems that we currently face right now is there are still a lot of households probably that are not exposed to a lot of Black people outside from the immediate circles, right? Like, you still have townships like Soweto. You have townships like Alex, where all the Black people are situated. But now, if you ask a white person, when last were you in Alex? Did you go to Soweto? The immediate response will be, no, I didn't do that. If when I've heard about a white person going to Soweto or Alex, it's like a big deal. Oh my gosh, I went to, and that therein lies the problem. That's the problem, that those places are still seen as, it's them. So the whole point of racism is an us against them. And as long as them still exist, we still have so much work to do. I was so disappointed once. There's a white lady that I work with, and we were supposed to do a project together. And I had to decide on the location because it was for me, it was for my work. And the whole story that I was trying to tell with this particular project was about my upbringing, where I grew up, my home. So I said the shoot needs to be in Soweto. And I said that to her, and she took it, and she said, yes, okay, cool. Yeah, we can definitely do that, And then there was a couple of days, and then a few days later, she sends me this long explanation about how her parents are saying she should not go to Soweto because it's not going to be safe for her. It's a new place and she's never been there before. What if she gets lost? I'm like, I'm not sending you to the jungle. I'm sending you to my home where I grew up. Like, I wouldn't say you should just go there if I just thought there are people just waiting to jump you and take your car from you. Like, what do you mean you don't feel safe? Like, who told you that it's unsafe to be around people in their territory, right? This is a conversation I'm having with someone in 2021. I didn't call her out on it. I sat with my disappointment, because then having to raise something like that with a person is like telling them that you're being racist. I don't think people want to hear that about themselves. But she was. Her parents told her that. Her parents were. And what saddens me is that it's our responsibility. We're doing that. Kids are clean slates. And we teach our prejudices about our bias about what we have been taught about the world. So, Lynne, I'm taking up so much time. I'm sorry, Ferhensha, I'm going to give you now. Lynne spoke something about the only black people that she knew was a lady that cleaned her house and, the guy that was doing the garden. So the help.
Yes.
Right? Which is the general stereotype of poor and black, that you're the help. We holidayed in Cape Town with my husband last year, and we were mistaken for the help like twice by white children. One was in a store. I have to say this. My husband was wearing, like, he looked like really clean. He had he loves his clothes. He was wearing like a very expensive tracksuit, And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just trying to paint a picture, right? He looked like a guy that, he's got his
not
stuff
in uniform.
Together. Yeah, he was not in uniform, but it was the color of his skin that I'm assuming made a kid come up to her like, hey, can you help me with this and that in the store, right? And then I looked at that, I'm like, wait, that's a bit wrong, but okay, maybe I'm overthinking it. And then we go to a restaurant and I'm playing cooking. No, Timo was playing cooking with other kids, and two small kids came up to me and said, can you make me and my sister some eggs and some, so you look at that, and the fact that I had to kind of get triggered like that as a black person to be like, child, I'm not your nanny, or I'm not your help, was like, made me think about exposure. It made me think about, oh, shame. Probably these kids haven't related or engaged with black people outside of their own families and their own friends, that the only image that they have about who a black guy is or who a black woman is what they know, which equally happens in black communities as well. The only time I started getting exposed to white people was in university, right? Like my whole upbringing, I went to black schools and I never really related with white people. And what that did for me is that it gave me such a terrible inferiority complex, because I am now here in this big world, and I'm now experiencing what privilege looks like. Because not only do they look different to me, but it looks like they have more than what I do. And that was just a sad experience for me, being out there in the classroom. You couldn't compete with me in the classroom. Excuse me. This is where I'm going to, right? And then you get outside in the world and it has to be social, and you're like, oof, I'm the black girl that's been wearing the same shoe for like 3 weeks. So it's exposure on both ends. I'm being intentional about making sure that I take Timo to this private school. It's costing me a lot, but I'm like, you have to exist within that space because you belong there. You belong there. And it's also exposure on the other side, where white people have to make it okay with being around in the township, because it doesn't mean that Black people are just waiting to pounce on you and take your wallet. And I understand that the criminal element definitely exists. We can't get rid of that. But then you can't now think the whole township is dangerous because every black person is a thief, you know?
Yeah. You know, you talk now about, you know, I've learned, in fact, and this is interesting, I see my mistakes through my children's behavior sometimes. And I don't know what mistakes I've made, actually, but we were walking down the road about 2 years ago, and there was a guy walking on the other side, and I don't know, he just made me uncomfortable. And I said to my kids, get on the other side of me, get behind me. And one of my children said, but it's a white guy, Mom. And I was so ashamed. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know if it's something I said, and I've brought this up in a video before, or if it's something that has come about by society, what other people have said. I don't know if it's something I've said or if it's an action I've done. But I felt so ashamed of that. And, you know, and this is why, you know, we need to look at this. When as a mother, when something like that happens, we need to really look at ourselves and have a conversation with our kids and see where is this coming from. And another thing that happened that really it got me to have my first discussion with my children about racism is we were at Checkers, and at the counter, very loud, my daughter says, "Mummy, why do only brown people want to work here?" And I thought, so this is interesting. You know, we've grown up now. She's in, you know, her best friend is colored. She's got a couple of black friends, and I've got black and colored friends. So it's not the same as when I grew up, but there's still massive differences. There's still so much inequality. There's so much still so wrong. And this is what my daughter, and you know, like when she said, why do only brown people want to work here? And I thought, oh, we got so much to talk about. So I'm learning a lot through my children, and it's quite an interesting experience, and there's been a lot of growth through that.
Okay, can I jump in?
Yes.
Yeah, jump in.
I just want to go back to the othering. I think like a simple question of a preference, an individual's preference that is a preference that is something of their own, that is not linked to any bias, to any discrimination, to any division, is if we come in from an outside perspective and we have all this other baggage or all this other biases that we're carrying within ourselves. And if that question arises, like about the cup, I'm so sorry, Lynn, I'm going to use your example about the cup. It's daddy's preference. It has nothing to do with the diverse race of people who are working in your home. It's daddy's preference. That's his individual preference. The fact that I would ask you, none of us use that cup. So let's put it back because it's daddy's. But the fact that you have to pause, it is that bias that we carry within ourselves. It is the children don't have that, but we have it because we're going through that learning journey. We're dissecting those things. So we're more aware of it. But that awareness sometimes just adds on unnecessary decision-making details that should fall away, because at the end of the day, it actually contributes to othering. So it's, even though you may say something and the intention behind it is different and it may be misconstrued, but the intention is so important. And when you have that intention of it just being what it is what it is, it's just an individual preference, then there's nothing more to it, and we don't create that entire outlook and send ourselves into the stress of having to make this decision where it's so complicated, but it isn't. You know, because once we break down those barriers of othering, even in the jobs, you know, we look at gardening and the help in our home and nannies and tellers and all what we call bottom line jobs as in a derogatory sense, as in lesser than, you know, but a nursery school teacher who has status earns 50% less than a teller at Checkers and Pick and Pay.
Wow.
And it's just that simple thing that we've created this view that because it is majority of brown people in this, because of apartheid, because of how we were brought up, because of the things that we sat with, that we othered, you know, in those people that exist, we have even latched those kinds of belittlement to those positions and those jobs that unfortunately, you know, Black and brown people fell into. And it wasn't something, sometimes, most of the time, I think now, if education systems would open up a bit more, because there's still such a big divide in education systems. So there's an underlying unfairness to the job market and to where Black and brown people majorly work in. But it also is, we need to create that sense in our children that every job is a job. Every job is important. Every job holds status and title. You know, it is not, if you have a gardening service that comes to your home, you know, they're not treated differently. But if you have a man, a single man who is a Black man that comes to your home to clean your garden, then he is viewed differently. So I think that whole othering of, you know, like looking at something as a job in a different way than you'd look at it if any other race, if a white, you know, race group had to hold that job, then it is also creating that sense of lesser than and of them and us and of like only the help, you know, the help is an important job. I mean, I can't even imagine my life, you know, if I had and could afford to have help, it would, you know, that person, I would worship that person because it's so heavy, you know, to clean, to look after your kids, to run an entire household, and having that person as a partner, you know, it's not just somebody who comes in to clean up after you. And I think that view of when we speak into our children, especially, is to create that sense of importance for these people or for people in those positions that really help and add to our lives in such a magnificent kind of way. And I also think, like what you said about the divisions, where, you know, we always look to, even as an Indian person, it was always where I come into spaces looking for my people. So it's like, you know, where's my people that look like me, people that have the same culture, you know, as me, people that have the same financial status as me, and I latch onto that kind of people because it's safe. It's what I'm comfortable with. It's what I've known. Is for me to latch on to Black and brown people, and I it's very rare that I would come out of that space, you know, to get into spaces where there are majority white women, and it's taken a long time for me to accept that I belong in any space. That yes, it may be comfortable, but why does it feel that way? You know, has it, you know, what kind of inner turmoil or what kind of inner division have I created within myself throughout this time, even though, you know, where I grew up in a town which was surrounded by like 5 areas, which was just Black and brown people. And on the other side was the white area. And we always said, you know, it's the white area, and Karabo disappeared.
Oh no, I'm sure she'll be back.
So it was, and you don't go there because it's almost like you don't belong there. But as Karabo said, which I really loved, is that you belong, and we have to show up and take space so that we can create a space of equality. So yes, I was just saying, I love what you said about you belong there. So I was, yes, you belong. So take up space and make sure that you heal within yourself, that you belong there. You take up that space, you expose, the majority to this is how it is. There is no othering. We are human. We are all, one. We are all the same, and we belong in every corner of the earth as much as anyone else does. So I really love that part.
Yeah.
So
that's powerful, because I think that's such a big part. For me, that's what I advocate a lot to Black and brown kids, right? Because our generational trauma is that you actually don't belong anywhere. You're nothing.
Yes.
You're nothing. That's what the civil rights movement is about, just that kind of unworthiness. That's what apartheid is about, that the segregation had to just happen, and then the Black and brown people had to be placed there away from everything else, because that's how townships were created, right?
Yes,
Townships were created because this one place where we can access all the help, where the help can just get on the end.
Yes.
And right now, the biggest objective for Black people who are still in the township is just to make enough just to get on the N1 and just get out of the hood as quickly as possible, right? So our trauma is that we don't belong. We're fighting to belong in the northern suburbs. We are fighting to belong in those managerial jobs. We're fighting to be in those male-dominated spaces, because we have, particularly Black women, we have constantly been told that we don't belong anywhere than the kitchen. We don't belong anywhere than taking care of other people's children. My mother was the help. And she would leave here in the morning, the home in the morning, and go to wherever she was working to help and come back, and she's tired by that time. So we're actually keeping these women away from their families as well. And that's why we have to appreciate them so much, because they are out here helping us raise our families, and we're keeping them away from
their own.
So that is, what you said was so powerful. I'm sad I missed whatever I got disconnected from, but I was resonating with what you're saying so much, because it really is so powerful. So the belong part is so profound. Zozibini said it, that, take up space.
Yes.
And kids seeing a beautiful, iconic Black woman like that on the world stage was just affirmation that you also belong.
Yes.
Trevor Noah is a symbol of power right now for Black and brown people to say, you belong here as well. If you want to make it here, don't believe whatever they've been telling you for all those years. Don't believe that you have to justify your identity by carrying this Donbass everywhere you go. You don't have to justify anything. You have a space that you want to get into, and belong there. You spoke about... Yeah, sorry.
The more space we take up, the more opportunities we create for our children, because then we are forcing the system to open those opportunities up to everyone else, to open those opportunities up for us, to make space for us, because we demand that we will take up that space.
Yeah,
I think that's fantastic. Sure. And from my side, I still see that most of the places I go to, my children's school, and the shopping mall, and the area where I live, I think there's only white people. We live in a little crescent, a little complex. There are only white people living here. And the first colored people are building a house up the road. So it's one household in a whole complex. It's not equal. It's still very unequal. If you look at it as white people, we are the minority. But where I live, it's and the spaces that I go to is majority white people. And I think, Ferhensha, was it you that mentioned something about the restaurant reviews?
Yes.
It was yours. So you I think
yes.
you did it on Instagram where you said that
yes.
people need to start, when they write reviews, mention about, who's eating out at the restaurant. And when I first read that, I thought, that's a bit of a strange thing to say, because I've never noticed who's eating at a restaurant. I have not noticed. But I thought about it. Okay, so if I go walk into a restaurant and it's only Black people and I'm the only white person, I'm going to know immediately. I'm going to feel that. I'm going to get this this isn't my space. And it really, it kind of opened up my eyes. And now when I go out to eat, I sit there and I think, who's sitting here? How many? And you're like, let's count the people. Let's add up the ratio. And it is.
It's like that.
I'm sorry, the places I eat out at are majority white people. But I never noticed it until you post. And although you said, the reviews don't mention that sort of thing. And you're right, they don't. I write the reviews of the restaurants. I don't mention it. I will. But
because we feel it. I mean, and it's something that not many understand, and a lot of us put it, brush it off like, oh, it's just me being sensitive, but it isn't. It is, there are people who are sitting, and when it is a majority of white people that are sitting there are 50% of those people that still have racist views. And when you walk in, that energy, you can feel that energy, and it is traumatizing. And I think that's how, the impact, it's trauma. And to deal with and heal from a trauma, you acknowledge the trauma. And there's so many that refuse to acknowledge that this, no matter whether it's microaggressions, no matter whether it's unintentional, that the action of racism is traumatic for those receiving it.
I went to a new restaurant the one time. A friend of mine were meeting for the first time. I've been talking online, and like, oh, let's find a place. And I found a place in Joburg, and I got there first. And I walked in, and all I saw were white people. Oh, I went in for a few moments. Oh, that was actually such a weird experience. And I had never experienced something like that before. I sat down for a couple of minutes, and the waiter came. Oh, and the help was all black. The helper came out. The waiter came and asked if I needed something, and I felt so stupid. Like I didn't know if I wanted to order what. I didn't know what I wanted, and I stood up. And I'm like, I'll be back in a couple of minutes. And I went to go wait for him outside, and I chilled outside. I was like, I'm not doing this alone. And he came, and I explained, and he's like, nah, we can do this. We can do this. But the fact that there had to be so much work that has to go behind me just sitting in the damn restaurant to eat.
To address that feeling
But that's so
that
sad.
hurt.
I've never felt that in my life.
Oof. Yeah, that was something. That was something. Lynne, I wanted to say, you spoke of, so your daughter, how old is your daughter who asked why do they want to work here?
She's 9 years old now, and my son is 7. But I think this was a while back.
All right. So this is a good time to have honest conversations about our history.
Yes.
Because then what they're doing is they're showing a curiosity. Like I think the kids are very blunt, and they just blurt out stuff. But signals the curiosity behind that, because they ask the question. So I haven't experienced the questions yet, and the curiosity about why do they do this. It's not going to come out nicely verbally, but I don't have to shush it and make them feel terrible about it, because it's nothing terrible. They're just curious about it. So I think what I am hoping I will do with my kids when they start asking about, questions about Black people,
clear division.
We're exposed to that kind of community, like the Soweto community. So I won't have a lot of objections regarding that. But for example, let's say I was a white mom, and my kid is asking me about the help. Then we have an honest conversation about, listen, apartheid did this, and then talk about poverty and say economically there are people that are at a lower level than what other people are on. And these are the kind of jobs that don't require a lot of experience and stuff like that. So we can actually have those conversations to say, the system just lifts us up, man.
It is.
Someone came here and created a system, and here we are.
It opened up a beautiful conversation, actually, and it made me realize that I'd left it too long to address the discussion. But the thing is, like, up until then, I'm ignorant, clearly, and I've got a lot of learning to do. And up until then, it hadn't really occurred to me to have a discussion. And then it hit me like, poof, we've really got to have this discussion. And it took us into Nelson Mandela and Robben Island and apartheid. And my daughter just sat there. She was like shocked because her best friend is colored. And she just said to me, what about my friend? I'm like, your friend, her mom, they would have had, they would be facing like horrible stuff. And it was quite nice to have the discussion with her, but it really, it's, I should have done better. You know what I mean? And I can share that with other moms now and say, start the discussion earlier. I mean, I think this was about 2 years ago. So she was about 7 or 8. But I can say, honestly, I should have started the discussion earlier. And it didn't occur to me to have the discussion earlier. I have been trying to raise my children with the right attitude towards everybody and kindness and empathy and acceptance, and we're all the same. But I should have started actually addressing the discussion and talking to her more honestly a long time ago. Yeah. So, I mean, this is what this is all about. It's about learning. It's about doing better.
It's also a lot about unlearning, because what I think some people like yourself found yourself in is you just found yourself caught in that cycle, right? And it also happens so unconsciously, because I think kids really do learn from observation more than what we say. So we can't say, oh, God created all of us the same and we are all the same. And then when the black guy walks past your car, you just lock it quickly. Your kids are looking at you do that, right? And that's you signaling that, oh, I don't feel safe right now. The black person is not making me feel safe. So without even telling our kids that black people don't make us feel safe, they learn that. So they also then get themselves caught in a cycle of it's unsafe to be around black people. And if no one breaks the cycle, so that's why I'm grateful to be having this conversation with you, Lynne, because you have been aware of the fact that that's the conditioning that you received. Those are the stereotypes that you were taught about and the biases you were taught about black people. Your parents probably didn't have to say that to you, right? But that's what you kind of gotten used to. But you're intentionally and consciously trying to break the cycle. And that's powerful. Like I don't think you should beat yourself up about, I could have done better. That's how the learning was supposed to happen for you. And that's why I'm so for conversation. I don't think I ever say no to being invited to a conversation, because we have to have more of these conversations, because the more we have them, the more we change perspectives and change lives, and actually help people realize that, oh yeah, maybe I do have a little bit of a, I have some work that I need to do. So just breaking the cycle.
100%. And I think, you talk about how everybody grows up. My older sister, apparently when she was, I don't know, very, very young, was driving with my mom. And my mom said, we don't speak derogatory in our household, my parents growing up. So I think there were a lot of households that were very, there was a lot of racist speak and a lot of hatred and stuff like that. That wasn't the way that I grew up. Yet my mom said when she was driving with my younger sister the one day, she pointed and she said, Mommy, there's a black woman sitting in the front seat. She's not allowed to do that. And so this is exactly it. My mom never said to my sister, no black person is allowed to sit in the front. But she somehow, through actions, through what she's heard from other people, from society, caught onto this. And how hectic is that?
Yeah, that's
so action.
It affects us all. We grow up with these ideas that are planted in there from a very, very young age. And you can't just, okay, I'm not going to be racist now, and boom, flick a switch. You have to unlearn, you have to change. I mean, I'm a huge fan of change. I should be dead. Rehab's not a pleasant place. You very much get confronted, you get challenged on your beliefs, on your actions, on everything. And it's actually a really beautiful process. It's a painful one, it's an uncomfortable one, but it's a really good process.
You want to go, Ferhensha?
I like that.
Yeah.
I think we can. Does anyone have anything else to say on this topic? Can we move on to the next one?
Ooh, okay, yes. The next one is what I really want to dig into. We can sit here, we can talk about how has it affected us, all of that. And that is a good conversation. But what I want to know is, there's a huge inequality in our country, and in fact, all over the world. I mean, it's not just South Africa. Look at America. Quite frankly, it's a bit of a mess, and we need to know, like, so on a day-to-day basis, what can we as mothers do that can actually really change the way that things are? Have you got anything? Karabo?
I'll go first. Okay.
Okay.
For me, I feel like the first and foremost that I see in every space is to amplify those voices, give space, sit back. Why people don't have to take control anymore. You don't have to control spaces. You don't have to say who comes in and goes out. And I feel like Black and brown voices and efforts and everything that is being done in those spaces need to be amplified. We sit back and how do you do this? How do you do this? And I feel like there's so much of the time I see that huge divide, and it's so blatant in front of me. I just take a simple platform as Instagram, and I'll notice that the Black and brown community will amplify each other, and it's very rare that a handful of the white bloggers and businesses and big influencers will amplify Black and brown businesses without having some sort of give and take. But it's not equity, because a lot of it's unfair. It's a big division, and a lot of Black and brown businesses are just coming up. So there can't be an equality of give and take. There has to be some sort of equity of, like amplifying those voices, amplifying spaces where education is shared freely, so that it's not, traumatizing on spaces that are not wanting to have those conversations, that are so tired of having those conversations. And these conversations are happening in spaces where there are people who want to have the conversations. So amplify those spaces, follow those spaces, go through your learning journey through those free resources, and then pay for those resources as well, because it's effort and it takes a lot that comes out of it. And there's so many spaces that I've seen that want to share this information, that are now, see their worth in the information that they're sharing and charge for the information. And as soon as that comes to point where there is a fee attached to it, then there's a whole drop of support. And it's so evident, as to how it happens if you sit and view the whole space as to how it takes place. So for me, it's like to amplify in every opportunity you get. There are lots of Black and brown people taking up space, make that space and amplify their voices. Pay for it, amplify. And I think with there's and then your self journey, that's the biggest thing for me, is to amplify those voices, to get that education, to seek that education out where you can. If you can't afford to pay for it, then pay for it, work on yourself. And in that way, the biases that you have won't feed through into your household. It won't feed through into your children, because then you won't be caught without knowing how to answer certain questions, because you have the education behind you. So when they do pop up out of curiosity, when your child is ready to start asking those questions, then you know that they can comprehend everything that you have to tell them about it, that you have to educate them about. As much as we want everybody to be, our children to grow up kind and loving and to see everybody the same, out here in our world, there is still the big division. There are still schooling systems that are greatly divided. There's our financial system that is so warped that is not made for people of previously disadvantaged backgrounds. You'd say that in your suburb or in your complex there's mostly white people, and it's because, do you know how difficult it is in a financial system for a person of color to come out from a disadvantaged background to earn enough money to make that amount that is acceptable to be able to spend 6,000 to 8,000 rand on rent alone to live in an area that is majority white. There's such a big divide. There's so many hills and mountains that need to be climbed before we get there. And it's also, you have help, and you have help that you, as Karabo said, that you're taking away from their families. So what about getting children that this schooling system, that's my biggest passion, is the schooling system. It's like, get that education for the children of the person who's raising your children in the same schools as your children. Educate, offer that education, offer that space, and if you are capable of doing it. And it's also that whole, there's so many, Gi on Instagram, Gi Galela, she said to me once, Ferry, it's the gatekeeping that is so bad. It's the gatekeeping. You have to live in a certain area to go to a certain school. You have to pass certain criteria in order to go to be in a certain institution, to live in a certain space, and that all is just little things that came through from the systems of apartheid that have not been broken down, and it's gatekeeping for Black and brown people to make it through those spaces. And she said to me that is the most frustrating for her, is the gatekeeping that's happening. Those gatekeepers, those people who sit on those deciding boards and that have, enforced these rules, that those kinds of rules need to break. Education systems need to be open, because it is not a secret that it's so divided, and that, because people who live in areas that are affluent, that earn more money, that were given generational wealth, are able to pay the school fees to make those schools better, and then pump in more money for those schools to offer more, to be better. And then there are people in the poor areas who don't have that money to pay towards that school, to make that school better. And then our government also is failing us on so many levels. But why is it that school already has all those resources? So why is there sponsorships that are being fed more into that system when it could be fed into a school that needs it? Why is it that you cannot, there's like maybe every household in those areas have people to help them, have Black people to help them. Majority of those Black people have children that have to go to schools in their area. Some, don't make it to schools, and they cannot afford to pay for nursery schools, for baby care as well. And those households never see it. There's no helping hand. Maybe some do. I'm not, painting a general picture, but offer that education, offer that opening, offer that space in schools that certainly do offer more. As Karabo said, she is paying a lot of money to get her child into a private school to hold that space. So why not? It's not even that it has to be a private school. And our government schools are so vastly divided in resources, in equipment, in infrastructure. So it's within our power to break through those systems, to get those children of every race, especially Black and brown children, into those schools where they can take up space. And that's how we build everybody out, open those opportunities.
Is, the education, that is where it all starts. It's such an uneven footing. As soon as a child starts going to school, it's completely uneven. And that's just going to feed through for the rest of the life.
Yeah,
100%.
I think Ferhensha speaks so well to what we need to do on like a systematic level, because it's a system, you know. The fact that you still need to fill in what your race is when you're trying to apply for a bond means it still matters. If it didn't matter, then those boxes wouldn't exist there, right?
Oh,
They
that's
need to
bad,
know
yeah.
who you
Yes.
are, right? That's terrible. But on a micro level, I think what we need to
Yes.
do is be able to have the confidence to call each other out, right? You can't idly sit by while you're seeing an injustice. But injustice for me as a Black person, in comparison to injustice for you, Lynn, as a white woman, is very different. So injustice for me is seeing a young Black girl feeling like they are unworthy and they don't belong in certain spaces. So it's my responsibility for me to be able to remind Black and brown kids that you deserve to go anywhere you want to go. Don't let the legacies of our system dictate who you are, and who you are meant to be. So I need to stand as a light for that, because I consider myself such a powerful testimony of just being able to make it as well. Because like I had the odds just beat against me, man. I could have easily gotten myself caught in the system of thinking that I don't belong. So that's why I've had to fight through everything for
Through
me to
that.
be able to create a platform to be that voice. So I have to continue being that voice, but the calling out has to continue. So you can't watch someone treating a Black person unfairly and just have a conversation on the side to be like, oh, that was so terrible. Tell them it's terrible, because sometimes it also happens so unconsciously, right? Because sometimes we're not aware of our traumas. So some people say they are not racist because they truly believe that they're not. They genuinely believe that they are not. But then on a grassroots level, some of your actions and some of your decisions are actually encouraged and motivated by stereotypes that you have. So then it's going to manifest itself. You're going to look at them otherwise. You're going to say stuff about them that you shouldn't be saying. So we should then take the accountability of being able to call stuff like that out. And also, on the other hand, be open to just receiving. Because it's going to be tough. If I had to tell the lady I was supposed to work with that, oh, girl, you what not wanting to go to Soweto is actually like stereotype character of some form of racism there. So you need to check that, right? I should have done that. It was my responsibility to do that, because then I didn't change her. I didn't touch her life in any way. I was so afraid of what she was going to think about me that I decided to keep quiet, but I saw it for what it was. And so many of those things happen in our spaces. So many of these things happen in grocery stores. Sometimes tellers are being spoken to like they're absolutely nothing, because I'm coming here with the money and you are absolutely nothing. So I'm going to tell you that's an injustice. Call it out.
Yes.
Call it out. So we have to not stop teaching. We have to not stop speaking out, because then our kids are watching. The kids are watching. And if we grow up confronting injustice and standing up for people, then that's what our kids learn as well. So that when they find themselves in a situation where they also have to stand up for someone, they can do it boldly, because this is what is done in the house, not be a part of it because that's what's being done in the house. So let's not form part of injustice happening. Let's call it out.
I love
what
that.
you said there, and that's something that I encounter a lot, because way back when apartheid was still around, white people could be openly racist and nothing would happen. Now, if you're openly racist, you get into just a little bit of trouble. But what I see now is I don't see white people being openly, blatantly racist towards people of color. But I see white people thinking I'm on their team and saying racist things to me, which makes me feel so uncomfortable. And in fact, a while back, I received a WhatsApp message that was being shared around amongst from white person to white person, and it was titled "An Open Letter to Black People." And I read this, and I actually got sick. I sent that to you.
No,
Ferhensha?
but I've seen it on Facebook.
Oh, did you see it? It was shocking. And someone close to me in my family sent it to me. And I looked at this and I thought, what do I do with this? You know, like you say, it's uncomfortable to call people out.
Just for some context, Karabo, the letter focused on how colonialism made South Africa better, how it civilized South African people.
The wild ones, the ones that are beating on their drums and monkeys, and I don't know, the references were absolutely shocking.
Ghastly,
and like you said,
abhorrent.
2021 people. And so someone close to me sent this to me, and I left it for a while, a day or two, to think how I'm going to respond, because like I said, it is someone close to me. And then I just replied and I just said, look, this is wrong on a number of aspects. On a self-preservation thing, don't send stuff like that to my phone, because it's illegal. You know, it's dangerous just on a legal perspective. I said, you should not be forwarding that. You can be arrested and locked up. And I care about you and you're my family member. So please don't share that to anybody. It gets into the wrong hands and you're toast. That's number one. And I said, number two.
Into the right hands and you're toast.
Yeah, well, okay, we have a perspective here. But, you know, I also said, you know, you look at the state of this country right now, and the way I see it, this thing of racism and the tension and the hatred, it's like a bonfire. I said, and you're basically flicking a match. You've got to stop all the hatred. And you know, it's interesting how her perspective was, yeah, but I just forwarded it. It's like, it's not just a forward. It's a forward of hatred. It's a forward of prejudice. It's a forward of everything that's wrong with our country. You cannot do that. It's just, and if you do it, I said, just don't send it to me. I don't want to see it. I don't want to be part of that team. I don't want to be included in this ugliness and but
brutality.
So people are still behaving like that.
You know, I think it should first and foremost just be dehumanizing for you to even read something like that and think it's worthy to forward. Because I mean, referring to, like, you know, people of color as things that need to be, you know, tamed, and, you know, this uncivilized bunch, because that's what it's saying. And
yes.
You sending it means you believe it. My thing about,
or you resonate with it.
Yeah. My thing about like racist stuff like that is how easily they just get shared online, you know,
without a second thought.
Without a second thought. It's because it's not public anymore. We're not made to carry dumb buses anymore. But in households,
it's just a shame.
People are still looked as an uncivilized monkeys and all of that stuff. So we have to call that out, and I'm glad you did. And next, I think we also need to just be honest with each other to say, this is racist. You shouldn't refer to people like that.
Be blunt about it.
Be blunt about it.
We need to take out the colorful words. Like, you know, I'm so sorry, Karabo. You just Breaking Brown Silence said recently that you need to work on your own self-soothing to be able to take that now, because it's not something that you can be coddled and swaddled with anymore. It's wrong, it's hateful, it causes pain and hurt and trauma, and it is something that you need to address. And when you're called out with it, you need to learn your own self-soothing technique so that you can deal with it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
so Breaking Brown Silence that's an excellent account, you know, and she's always doing her own work and, you know, within herself as well. And she shares amazing insights just through her own journey. And, you know, there's so much that like just is such an epiphany sometimes, which is reading through those things, is that we cannot. Breaking Brown Silence on Instagram.
I just want to write that down. Breaking Brown Silence, IG. You know, I think the difference between apartheid and now, and this is a joke somebody told me, and it goes like this: how does every racist joke start? You know, people now are they're not being openly honest, like, you know. And the thing is, it goes back to the same thing you were taught as a little child. If you've got nothing nice to say, don't say it, and don't don't say something behind somebody's back that you're not prepared to say to their face. And for me, it's all about honesty and it's about integrity. If that's how everybody starts a racist comment, checking if there's no black person behind them, you shouldn't be saying it. You know, to me, it's just uncomfortable.
It's also the why of it. Like, is it because of fear of what you're going of the relapse, or is it because you know that it's wrong but you're still doing it? So those two, it's like, it's such a big difference. Like, you know, are you just not saying it publicly because you truly do believe it, but you're just scared of the repercussions? Or, you know that it's wrong. You know that it's wrong, but you're saying it anyway because you refuse to do the work to get out of that mindset. You know, is it something that you're sitting?
Yeah. So I think, for me, I think the honesty and speaking out, and I think, like I say, the racism now that I see most of the time is white people to white people. So I see it like at the school. There was one woman that said to me, all the children were coming out, she stands next to me, she goes, oh, there's a lot of dark people in the school now. So I turn on and say, yes, isn't it lovely? But that's not how it was said to me. You know, it was like, oh dear, you know, there's a lot of dark people in the school. And quite frankly, there's not. It's mostly white. But there's still this thing where a white person that I don't even know can stand next to me and say something like that, and they think it's okay. So, you know, I think it's about us being aware of it, being open, being open to change, open to learn, and opening your mouth when something like that is said, and just, you know, confronting that person, because otherwise things aren't going to change.
But the awareness is so important, because then if you have to check the coast, then that's your first signal to say, hey, wait,
something's
something's wrong.
Amiss.
Well, that's a red flag right there. Why are you feeling a bit bad about it? Then observe that. So the self-work is so important. The self-work is so important, because if you hit forward on that thing, there's an element of there that you believe is true. And if it's a whole trashy letter about the state of blackness and whatever, and how it needed to be tamed, whatever, then there's definitely something wrong. You need to do that work, because then if you don't, I'm just so scared for my kids, people. Oh my goodness, I'm just so afraid for the children, because like I said, I do not want my daughter to be dealing with the same stuff in like years to come. We really can't, because it sucks dealing with stuff like that, right? Yes. This is the first time I recall that experience in the restaurant, because Ferhensha, you helped me. I had no idea what that was. I didn't even take a moment to want to think about it or reflect about how I felt in that restaurant. That was terrible. That was a terrible thing to experience as a black mom. I don't want my kids to experience the same thing, and this is why I'm on a journey of conscious parenting to begin with, because I'm aware of what I experienced under the guardianship of whoever's taking care of me, and I don't want my kids to feel like that. So that's why I need to be aware of those traumas, and I need to do intentional work for me to be able to break those cycles and be able to move outside of that and redefine what it means to be a parent. So as a human being, just redefine how you relate to people that don't look like you. Redefine how you look at people that don't have the same amount of money as you do. You know, redefine how you look at people that don't share the same views as you. You know, we have to redefine that for ourselves, because the previous generations didn't do right.
No.
I'm so sorry, but they messed it all up. They fucked it all up, right? This is why we're here. So let's do different. Let's not, you know, allow ourselves to be caught in the same thing that's definitely not working. It's not working for us. It's hurting us. We can break that.
Well, it's 20
and stop
years
it, and stop it from hurting our kids.
I mean, what's changed? I mean, a lot's changed, but how is it I mean, I would have thought that in close on 20 years, we'd be in a different place today. But we're in a very bad place.
Because we don't want to acknowledge that.
The awareness and the acknowledgement.
Yeah, we don't want to acknowledge it, because we are talking about it. You know, we're talking about it, but as long as there's no openness to say, okay, as long as you still get someone, Lynne, that's telling you, girl, don't post that.
No, all the time.
They have underlying ideas about what it means to post that and how it's going to get received. So they already have preconceptions about that. Then let's talk about that.
Yes, let's address why.
Why should I not post it? Let's talk about that. Because then if they tell, then we're not educating. If you're just telling someone, don't do this, and you're like, explain to me, why shouldn't I do it? You're going to get dragged on social media. Why am I going to get dragged on social media? We're not having grassroots conversations.
Go to the core. Yes.
Let's go to the core of our problems. Because if we're still doing stuff on the surface, then we're not going to get anywhere. It's going to be the same old thing all the time.
100%. And I mean, what's wrong with a conversation? We can all have a conversation, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then do the work.
Yes. And the work.
And do the work, yes. It always starts at home, you know, everything starts at home. They say charity starts at home, education starts at home, everything starts at home. So call it out at home.
Yeah, well, that's
change your views at home. First in your home here, and then in your home outwards, and then expand it.
Yeah, well, we've kind of touched on this already, and it was in a previous video I've done. But I just wanted to kind of, and we have touched on it already, but talk about the importance of teaching our children about racism. Karabo?
Kids are not ignorant. Kids recognize differences from a very early age, you know. Kids are actually really smart because they can observe and they can make their own deductions about stuff. So if we don't talk to them about stuff, then we're leaving everyone else to define what that means for them. And how many stuff does society just get wrong? How many stuff does mainstream media get wrong? So now what happened with the recent unrest was wild. I remember going to a mom Facebook group and asked, what are you telling your kids about what's happening outside? Because I was like, I'd like to know what's happening here. You know, the comments even had to get it, like they ended up getting like locked because it was like they were saying, no, it's naughty people just being naughty and we're not safe right now and we should stay in our houses. And I'm like, that's what you're telling your kids about what's happening out here? You're not going to tell them about being poor and hungry. You're not going to explain that to them. You're not going to explain about being poor and being promised the same thing over and over again and someone not doing it to you and what anger makes you do. You're not going to talk about that. So
and manipulation.
Exactly. We're not going to talk about the manipulation that happened. We're not going to be having important conversations about that. So we let other people redefine what that means, because then they have access to social media. They have access to their friends and other people. So we are the biggest gatekeepers for our kids to state what comes in and what doesn't come in. So even with racism, it's so important to be able to sit down with them and really explain to them, because racism doesn't mean you have to tell people, your children, that white people are terrible and they don't like you and you must always fight with them and you always defend yourself. That's not the conversation. The conversation is so much deeper than that, you know. Exactly. The conversation can even go, it can be a beautiful conversation about how we are all the same, but someone bad came in and said, if you're different, then you are not the same and we don't belong together and we shouldn't talk to each other. Because that's how the system of apartheid was.
If you don't look like me, then we treat you differently.
White only, black only. We can explain that.
I want to bring in here something I read about Ferhensha. I think I forwarded to you. And it was something really interesting I read in America now. Apparently this whole year, there's been this whole big hoo-ha about critical race theory. And critical race theory is something they've got in America that they're teaching in schools, apparently, how racism and all of that has affected the legislation and the way that things are today. And apparently a lot of people are fighting against it because I think the white people are saying that it's teaching our children how white people are bad and should have, you know, and to be ashamed of their own skin. So the whole point of that, I think, is missed, because it's teaching how racism has played a part in where we are today. So that's exactly, you know, what you're referring to there. I mean, just because I'm white doesn't mean that I caused the way things are in the world today. But because I'm white, I can change the way things are in the future.
Exactly.
And it's again centering white self, you know. No, never mind the education, never mind the understanding that Black people and brown people need from the world. Never mind that. Let's talk about how it's going to affect me. Let me center myself.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't have to be about guilt or shame. There's actually just focus on
education.
The bigger
it's reality. It's what happened.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's about saying there's a problem, let's solve it. Not let's go back 5 generations and see where it started and blame people for it. It's really beyond that. And then also what you said, Karabo, about the riots, because my daughter was like, I'm so scared and it's so hectic. And I said, but you need, it is scary and it's very sad, but it's complicated. And I did have a conversation with her, and I said to her, she said, yeah, but they shouldn't be going and stealing the food. And I said, look, I'll be straight with you. If I had no job, if I had no home, if I had no food, and I've got you 2 kids, what do you think I'm going to do to feed you? I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to sit here and point fingers at some mom that's trying to feed her 2 kids.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry, if I was in the same situation, I would do anything to prevent my children from starving.
So those unrests were very like complicated. Like when you look at the source of it, it's so complicated, because also people just got, when you take advantage of people's already underlying emotions and frustrations, that's how that manifested. But also it relates to that, because I think we could have easily perpetuated the stereotype.
Yes.
Right? To say, I actually said that and got called out for it, because I said we're actually perpetuating a stereotype right now, right? And I think I said it too soon, but in actual fact, it was a fact. Because what did it look like? Black people were doing what? They were being rowdy and uncivilized and stealing and whatever. That's the typical stereotype. And if we were not careful about how we present that information to our children, we're doing the same. We're perpetuating the same stereotype. But then as parents, as guardians who have been entrusted with these beautiful, important lives, we can counter that. We actually have the power to do that, because this is their first school. My kid, I'm waiting for Timu to learn history and get told that South Africa was founded in 1652 when Jan van Riebeeck came to this country.
That word.
No, it wasn't. No, it was not. I have the power to counter that, right? I think I'm going to have a problematic child in classroom when the teacher said 1652 and she's like, no, my mom said that's not true, right? Because we can counter the information that our kids access. We have the power. We have the most power. The system,
as long as it starts with us.
Exactly. We have to take hold of our power over the information that our children have and how they navigate and access the world.
As you said, it's not about what we say or what we verbalize, because they're right there beside us, experiencing and observing everything as it happens. Yeah. There's an experience I had, which will talk to the innocence of a child and then the observed actions that pull through. I was doing a lesson with my little ones, and they're 4 to 5 year olds, and we're doing colors. So just before we do our end of year reports, then we just go through all of their stuff that they learned throughout the year. And so I was doing colors, and I had on my table a few shapes cut in different colors, and I didn't have brown paper. So I thought, oh, well, I called the first child, I did all the colors, and then I pointed to my skin and I said, what color? And it's like, it's brown. And then they went away, and then I needed, then I went through all the colors again, and I pointed to my skin, and the child said, no, it's brown. And then I went through the colors again, and I called another child, and I asked her, okay, so what color is my skin? And she said, she was unsure. And so she paused, and she said she doesn't know. So I said, okay, maybe I'm not brown enough, So I went to dig for something, and I couldn't find the color brown. And so I said, okay, I'm not going to, put another child you know, in that position. And so I took out a whole lot of magazines, and I said to her, let's find the color brown. And then she went through the magazine and she found a child. And then she said, she can't find the color brown, but she can find, there's the color black. And it was a brown child. And then I took the color black and I asked her, what color is this? And then she said, that's black. So I said, and what color is this? So she said, black. So I said, are the two colors the same? Then she said, no. And then she was so confused. She was so confused. And I thought to myself, so I asked her, where did you learn, you know, about this color? And what makes you think, you know, where does it come from? Like, where did you learn that this color is black and that color is black? And so she said, no, when she drives with her dad and there are people crossing the road, then he always shouts at people and he says, oh, there's black people, black people. And so she, you know, just from a color point of view, you know, she was so in conflict within herself, a 4 to 5 year old child, unsure as to why that title was given.
Creating so much confusion for the kids, man. Breaking them. We need to be aware of this.
So those conversations are so important, because even though they may not come to us in a blatant way of, you know, asking out of curiosity, it's there in them, and it's confusing them, and we have to give them the reality and the knowledge behind it in order for them to understand, because we don't give them enough credit. And they are there beside us, living and experiencing everything as we go through it.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I hear a lot of people say that they don't teach their children about color and race, or that they don't talk about race or color, or don't see it. And I think that it's a bit of an odd thing to say. I mean, we all notice it immediately. So why can't we?
We are not a colorblind society.
We're not. Kids are not colorblind.
And racism, it's not the same thing.
Yeah, kids are not colorblind. Oh, if we like, that's actually a very ignorant stance. To be like, you know, I don't see color. Girl, you do.
You have to. You have to. The world is beautiful with color. If you don't see it, that's sad.
Beautiful, exactly, because our diversity is so beautiful. We've got so much to learn from each other. I think the answer is love, man. I think the answer is just love. Let's just love each other unconditionally, because loving each other is understanding how your background just been different from mine, right? And it could have shaped who you are right now, right? And just because you have less doesn't mean you are less. I'm going to love you anyway. Because in essence, on a human level, we all want the same things. We all want to feel safe. We all want to
be loved, to feel loved.
To feel seen and understood. We all want, that's just the basis of our humanity. But then if we've gotten ourselves caught in the system that says, actually, there's more to you. There's your skin color. There's your economic standing. So the answer is just love. Let's just love each other.
Always. Cool. So we've got at least 120 comments. I see it's been stuck on 120. So I think that's the max that it shows. So, boom. Let's go see what people are saying. Oh, okay. I'm going to start at the beginning. Oh, okay. Senanapo. Maybe you need to pronounce it.
Yeah, you did well.
Senanapo.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. So she says it's really painful and she doesn't keep quiet, and that's I think it's a good thing to speak up. I mean, we all need to do a hell of a lot more of that, and I think if we do that, we're going to be on the right path.
But I see you. I know that it, you know, the to address it constantly is re-traumatizing oneself. So that is why the responsibility is on those who need the education to find it for themselves, pay for it, go to places where the resources are there, so that you are not constantly hurting others in the lack of that understanding, sitting in that ignorance, and having to educate you and relive the pain.
And I think that's an important thing, is that I've heard a lot of people saying, oh, you must get over it, apartheid was years ago. But if I was born Black, I probably would have been in a township, and I certainly wouldn't have the privileges that I have today, and neither would my children. And so, like I say, only in 1991, I think it was, did people of color come to our school. So how can the trauma and the pain and the inequality, I mean, I don't feel it because I'm sitting here in this place of privilege, and I've had it easy. I haven't had any of that trauma. So for someone in my position to go and say, oh, get over it, this pain needs to be acknowledged by everybody.
Yeah. It's like telling someone to get over, the trauma of losing their parent. Oh, just get over it. Trauma is trauma.
Exactly. And it never completely goes away. I mean, you can heal from it, but it takes a lot of work. And I think also it's not just trauma. I think it's trauma upon trauma upon trauma, because apartheid's gone, sure. Racism isn't. Inequality isn't. So you've had the trauma of apartheid, but you're still, like you say, you're still struggling to get ahead. You're still struggling to get an education. You can't get finance for your house, and you've got all these things piled against you. It is going to be painful.
Fragments of it everywhere.
Exactly. We've got Jill. Well, the first thing is to acknowledge that you've fallen short and then work from there. And we've got KG. We need to unlearn the hatred from home. Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I think it's not just racism, it's everything. It's like addiction. I'm an addict, but that comes through from generations. We've got addiction in my family. So, if I don't break the cycle and I don't recover, it will probably be passed on to my children or my children's children, because that's how pain and all of this stuff goes. It is definitely a cycle. Got Letitia saying it needs to be discussed everywhere. Hi, Farana. Nice to see you again. And yes, we've got to keep speaking. And then also, Karabo, when you said that somebody called you out, the fact is, if you're going to say something on social media or on YouTube or your website, somebody's going to call you out. So I don't think it would have been too early. No matter what you do, someone's going to call you out. And I remember when the Black Lives Matter thing was going on, and some people put up a black square, and then other people said, you're just putting up a black square because to just like jump in the line. And then somebody else said, you didn't say anything about Black Lives Matter. So like the people that didn't say anything are called out, and the people that did say it. So it becomes such a mishmash and a mess.
You can't please everyone. Can't make everyone feel
it's so much a feeling, so many individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we've got Annalisa that left her job of 7 years because she was treated differently.
But imagine how she was feeling for 7 years.
Yeah, totally.
Because it didn't just happen on the 7th year. So that's terrible. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. That's terrible.
But I hope that you found a place where you feel happy and content and safe. So
you belong there. Don't forget, Annalisa, you belong to be in those spaces. Don't let them make you feel otherwise.
Yeah. Redefine is the new thing, Karabo.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what else. So Felicity says, great point. So how can all moms of different colors fix this going forward? We need to make the next generation better, and redefining how we relate to people are different to us. I think we've about talking
addressed
and having
that
a conversation. I'm not going to understand what you've been through, Karabo, until I ask you and I talk to you about it, and we can, compare notes on how things are different. And, then you can understand me better. I understand you better. And I think it's about looking at it, like you said, it's got to be from a place of love.
Yeah.
And, trying to learn and being open and honest.
what we can do on a practical level, I just thought now, is how in redefining, right? What we can do is there's a lot more content now that's raised to teach our children about our differences as well. So you can actually get your child the black doll to play with so that she can see black and white dolls as beautiful, because there's a lot of people that are doing that now. You can get your kids more books that have black characters or have black children, about black hair, because black hair is a big thing, right? Sometimes it's difficult for white kids to understand black hair. There's a new book now, my coily crowny hair is called, and it's such a beautiful book, and I think every girl should have it, not just black girls, to help them build confidence for themselves, but also every South African girl should have that book, because it's so beautifully illustrated, it's a story so beautifully told, and it teaches so much. So we can actually do that in our homes to get our kids to watch more stuff that has black characters, because society is already kind of trying to perpetuate a bad stereotype about what kids of color should look like or have to behave like. We can counter that messaging by providing them beautiful content that paints a beautiful picture of who the different people actually are.
Yeah,
invest in resources.
Yeah, and also, aren't there those? I've seen those pack of crayons or it's pencils, I think, and it's got
Yes, the color me.
Because my kids always like, okay, peach is the skin color, so they always draw the skin color in peach. I mean, they are white, so that would make sense, but it'd be nice to have a whole array of colors for them to choose from, and I think that's
yeah, the Color Me crayons are actually also really cool, and they also have a coloring book now as well. So
really. Okay, yeah. Stunning.
You can get that as a duo.
And then, Ferhensha, you've got some resources. You've got the culture one.
Yes, I have some booklets.
Yeah. So
that just address just general loving yourself as you are, and just addressing our public holidays in South Africa, and just a little bit of what they're about and that sort of thing. Yes.
For parents that also would be interested, I don't know, can I tell them where to get some of these resources?
Of course. Yes.
And I think Lynne does a blog afterwards, so she'll put all of in that blog.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Because Earthly Kids provides awesome resources for books that you can read, and then Toys with Roots is also the best platform to get toys, and even puzzles. They have got puzzles. They've got really amazing stuff. That just, because we have to see it as beautiful, so it paints diversity as beautiful. So Earthly Kids and Toys with Roots, those are the two places you can start at if you want to go that direction.
Perfect.
Sorry, Karabo and Lynne, I'm gonna have to run now, so I'm gonna say bye whilst you two can go through the rest of the comments. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation. It was fulfilling.
It was lovely having you again. Thank you. Cool.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Awesome. And then we've got KGKJ. It also involved internalized emotions that came out of surprise burst. And let's learn to speak about our problems to prevent unnecessary actions that come out with anger. I mean, I can speak from my personal perspective about anger and about emotions from an addiction point of view, not necessarily trauma from racism, but mostly self-induced trauma. You need to be able to work through this stuff and be able to work through it so that you're at a stage where, I mean, if you're bursting out in anger, it's probably because somebody has stood on your toes and said something that triggers you. And Natasha from Fit Like Mummy, I love her so much. I did a live video with her, and she just said suddenly, she goes, I love therapy. I just love it. And, it was beautiful hearing her say it like that, because a lot of people have got such a negative connotation of therapy. Like, oh, you got to be so up to go to therapy and have somebody help you through your stuff so you can cope. It is not that at all. If you've had trauma, to go and work through it with a therapist, it'll be a bit uncomfortable. It can be quite a a hectic process. But as somebody that's had an intense amount of therapy, I can vouch for it. I actually spent a full year in rehab, and intensive, like, to get me straight before I could get back into the outside world without injuring myself or others. And even now, I still do therapy regularly. And, if you've got so much anger and unresolved emotions, I can highly recommend that you go and get some therapy. And, once you've done that and somebody triggers you, you're able to, instead of just exploding in anger,
Yes.
you're able to kind of say, "Ooh, okay, this person has overstepped a boundary," and you can respond in a way that is helpful in healing to yourself and educational for the other person. So, yeah, if you've got this anger, I highly recommend you go get some therapy for yourself. It can make such a difference.
Yeah, I'm all for therapy. I had a time where I also did a year in therapy at one of my most lowest moments in life, and it is absolutely life-changing. I'm in therapy right now. I have a therapist and a life coach. That's how much work I have to do, because we have to understand that the brain is a whole machine that is really dictating how we feel about ourselves. Like all our emotions are embedded in here, and we can't access the stuff that's in here on our own. We need help, and there are people that go to school for this stuff. When you have a tummy ache or you're having chest pains, you go to the guys that know what's happening in there. And when you're having emotional outbursts as well, there's someone that knows how to access this part of yourself and help you actually gain power and control over it. So therapy is amazing. I'm all for therapy.
It is fun. I mean, at one stage, I had a counselor, I had a sponsor, I had a psychiatrist, I had a psychologist, I had like a team.
And we can get all of them. And when you can't, there are free resources for you to be able to get counseling. The SADAG does amazing. SADAG. They do amazing work. They have a simpler hotline for literally 24 hours, and you can text someone and say, "I'm really feeling terrible right now." And they experienced enough to ask you the right questions to help you navigate how you're feeling right now. A free line, people, on WhatsApp. You can literally just access someone on WhatsApp. Maybe you can also just state that resource to say, if you're really feeling like you can't do it on your own, there's someone that can help you do it.
Yeah, fantastic. And talk to your friends, and I think part of what this big problem is that nobody wants to talk about racism. Nobody wants to go there. And like not being able to talk about your trauma is traumatizing in itself. I found when I had my miscarriage, I needed to speak about it, and it makes people so uncomfortable. But I mean, that was the worst experience of my life. I was in active addiction for 15 years. I really trashed my life. I went through a lot of trauma. And then in recovery, after I had my 2 children, I had a miscarriage. And that trauma, it brought me to my knees. It was the worst thing I've experienced, like, in my life. But you've got to talk about it. You've got to work through it. And when somebody says, "Oh, you can't, don't go there," because it makes them uncomfortable, it's another kind of like, you must be quiet about it. And I think
that's also the signal of the conversation that you should be having. The one that makes you feel uncomfortable, uneasy, that's the one you should be having. Definitely.
Exactly. We need to be able to speak out about our trauma and our feelings and what's going on. And that is a process of healing. And I, like my blogs and my YouTube videos, for me, being able to speak, some people don't like what I have to say, that's okay as well. But being able to speak it and put it out there is healing in itself for me.
That's amazing. That's true. I also feel the same in my sharing, because I also was very blatantly honest about my miscarriage and looked back and what it felt like, because that's been my healing journey as well. And also been healing for other people. So that's why I'm not going to stop talking about it, because that stuff, because I felt that. I actually said that in my last post about my miscarriage. I said, I felt like I shouldn't share this with anyone. People are not going to be accepting to this. And then I moved beyond that fear, because I hate fear, like with everything in me. So whatever makes you fearful and makes you uncomfortable, that's where you need to push towards. So the racism issue, it can't always be uncomfortable. That means we really need to talk about it.
Yeah, and I'm very sorry for your loss. yeah, it's, for me, it was downright the worst thing ever that I can't even describe it. So I feel a bit of a kinship with other people that have been through it. I actually wrote a blog post on, I don't know which website I put it on, but anyway, it's just that I wrote a post saying I grieve alone, because it happened, and then my friends and my family and everybody, supported me, and then I was healed, and then the anniversaries come around. Nobody remembers. It's over for everybody else, but it's still there for me. And I sometimes post on my Facebook page, has anybody had a miscarriage? Do you got any tips for anyone? And everybody pours out their stuff, and I sit there scrolling through it every time. And I think the same thing, if it's any trauma, you've got to go there. And like you say, it may be uncomfortable, but the more I talk about the racism issues and the more open I am about my feelings and my experiences, and yes, there was the fear that someone's going to turn around and say, oh, you're white and you're talking about racism. What do you know? And how can you help? Or, or pick on something I've said. I did have that fear. I mean, I'm not going to say I didn't. I don't want to be crucified, like some of these companies have online. It's a scary thought that, someone will share Lynne's racist, Lynne said this, and they're going to nitpick. But my intention is good. And maybe sometimes I'm going to say the wrong thing. You just got to take that chance. And like I said, if you're going to say something online, you are opening yourself up for a bit of a crucifixion every now and then, but you've got to take that risk and you've got to get out there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm grateful for this. I'm glad I was part of this conversation.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm just going to scroll and see. We've got so many comments. I can't even get through it. We've got Yolanda saying that when we teach kids early on that it's okay to talk about race, we help them to understand, respect, and appreciate the differences between people. Yeah, 100%. Saying we don't see color, like we've already spoken about. I mean, it is ridiculous. We all do see it.
It's making color look like a bad thing.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. Siyataba, did I get that right?
Siyataba, Kamajola.
Siyataba.
Yeah, Siyataba, yes.
Yeah, I don't want my children to grow up as ignorant as I was growing up, and to come up with those same prejudices. I would like my children to be part of the solution and part of something more beautiful, because our country is beautiful. It's amazing. We've got so much diversity. We've got so much beauty. And I know a lot of people slam our country and say they want to go overseas and they want to get away from the danger. For me, I love my country. Yes, sometimes it's dangerous and there's a lot of negativity as well. But I think we've got a beautiful country. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, no, for sure. We shouldn't allow the bad stuff to overshadow the beauty. There's so much good. There's so much good.
Are you needing to run off?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah, just a bit, but these comments are so wonderful.
Cool. Okay, I think I'm going to later go through all the comments. Siyataba, yes, Lynne, because you are white doesn't mean you made things this way, but you can make a difference. That's the whole thing, is that I think so many people are focused on the hate and focused on the anger. And not to say that people of color don't have a right or a reason to be angry. I mean, of course you do. But moving forward is what we all need to focus on, and healing together as a country, as all people of different races, but moving together to try and fix things and try and make things a better place for our kids. We don't want it to be the same as it's been, because that's going to be, it's not going to be beneficial for anybody.
I think it also just needs to feel like we're all working towards trying to make a difference. Because then if we are the Black people feel like we're trying to, make amends, to be forgiving and understanding, but if we feel like we're making a lot of the contribution, but nothing is changing on a grassroots level, then there's also a lot of resentment that lingers, then the anger doesn't get better, because it's like, no, but we keep telling you guys that you guys are like keeping these gates and you guys are paying us less, but nothing is really changing on a systematic level, then the anger is going to definitely is definitely going to be there. So we all need to come together to say, how do we make a difference, and then do the actual work.
Yeah, what does it say? The only place where success comes before work is in the dictionary. I love that quote.
Yes,
you better do all the hard slog.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we're going to have to see a Taba. I think we're going to have to wrap up this video. And do you have anything else you would like to add?
No, I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm also talking about just myself when I talk about the calling out, because I think that's really important, because we're living with each other. We also have influence over each other. So even the platforms that we're using, we should always try to influence people to change their minds about, people who are dead set in their ways. So I'm glad you're using your platform for this, and I'll also continue doing the same on mine.
Perfect. Cool. And thank you so much for joining today. It has been an absolute pleasure having you. Sia Taba, I'm going to choose you as the winner of the 250 Rand Takealot voucher. If you can just inbox me on Facebook. I don't know if you're on my Facebook page or if you're on Karabo's.
Yes.
If I got that wrong now, did I get it right? On her Facebook page. So just come onto Kaboutjie on Facebook and send me an inbox message, and then we can connect, and I will sort out your voucher for you. And yeah, thank you so much for joining today. I know I gave you a bit of short notice for this video, I think, but it's been really awesome getting to know you. I've read some of your posts on Instagram. So yeah, you really sparked my interest, and you've been a fantastic guest. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for teaching me and joining today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And have a good Friday. Goodbye, everybody.
Happy weekend, everyone.
Cheers.